Hello, dear listener. This is the story of Albert Einstein's life, told in simple English. You will hear about his childhood, his ideas, funny moments, and how he changed the world with science. When Albert Einstein was born in 1879, no one thought he would become the most famous scientist in the world. In fact, some people thought he might never speak at all. He was a quiet baby. His parents worried because he didn't talk until he was almost 4 years old. But when he finally did, he surprised them by speaking in full sentences, as if he had waited until everything made sense in his head. His family was not rich. His father, Hermann, ran a small company that made electrical equipment. His mother, Pauline, played the piano and loved music. She dreamed her son might become a musician, not a scientist. Little did she know that Albert would become something more, a symbol of genius around the world. As a child, Albert didn't like school. He found it boring and strict. His teachers told him he would never amount to anything. One teacher even said, he will never learn anything at all. But Albert was not lazy. He was curious, very curious. He just didn't like learning facts without thinking about them. He wanted to ask questions, to understand why things worked the way they did. Once, he asked his teacher why magnets moved the way they do. The teacher said, "That's not something we need to talk about." Albert was not impressed. One day, when Albert was around 5 years old, his father showed him a small compass. The needle always pointed in the same direction, no matter how he turned it. Albert was amazed. Something invisible is pushing it, he thought. That moment stayed in his mind for years. He wanted to know what that invisible force was. This simple compass was the first step in a long journey, a journey that would change how we see the universe. Einstein didn't do well in all subjects. He was terrible at learning languages, and he didn't like memorizing dates in history. But he loved numbers. He loved puzzles. He would spend hours thinking about light, space, and time. While other boys played outside, Albert stayed indoors and thought. His classmates called him the dozy one, meaning sleepy or slow. They didn't know that inside his head, the speed of light and the shape of space were dancing. As a teenager, he got into trouble at school. He argued with teachers. He refused to learn things he didn't care about. Eventually, he dropped out before finishing. Most people would think that was the end of his future. But Albert was different. He moved to Switzerland and took an entrance exam for a school called the Polytechnic in Zurich. He failed it, except for the math part, which he passed with ease. They let him in the next year, and he began to study seriously. After finishing school, Einstein couldn't find a job as a professor. No university wanted him. So he took a job at the Swiss Patent Office. There, he worked all day reviewing inventions, many of them strange and useless. But the job gave him time to think. He would finish his work quickly, then take out a scrap of paper and begin thinking about the universe. In 1905, something amazing happened. Albert, then just 26 years old, published 4 scientific papers. Each one could have made a scientist famous. But he wrote all 4 in 1 year. This year is now called his miracle year. In one paper, he explained how tiny particles move in liquid, something people had seen but couldn't understand. In another, he showed that light can act like both a wave and a particle. This idea later helped create lasers and even solar panels. But the paper that really shocked the world was the one about time and space. He said that time is not the same for everyone. A clock on a fast-moving train will tick more slowly than one standing still. It sounded like science fiction. But he had the math to prove it. This was the beginning of what we now call the theory of relativity. And then came the most famous equation in history, E equals mc squared. It's short, but powerful. It means that energy and mass are the same thing. You can turn mass into energy, and energy into mass. This idea would one day lead to both nuclear power and the atomic bomb. Einstein had opened a door to a new kind of science, and the world would never be the same. But Albert didn't change. He still had messy hair. He still wore old clothes and forgot where he put things. Once, he lost his passport and told the police, "You don't understand, I am Albert Einstein." The officer replied, "Well, you'll have to prove it." He also had a great sense of humor. Once, a little girl wrote to him, saying she had trouble with math. He wrote back, "Do not worry. I have problems with math too." Of course, this was a joke. He had once solved a complex math problem just by thinking about it in his head while walking in the mountains. Even as he became world famous, Albert remained simple and kind. Reporters chased him for interviews. He once said, "To punish me for my genius, fate made me famous." He didn't enjoy fame. He just wanted to think, to teach, and to play his violin. Albert Einstein became famous very quickly, but he didn't change much. While many people wanted to shake his hand or take pictures, he just wanted to be alone with his thoughts. Reporters followed him, students crowded him, and even kings and queens wanted to meet him. Once, a man asked him for his autograph during dinner. Albert said, "Sure," then signed the man's napkin. The next day, 10 more people showed up with napkins. In 1915, Einstein completed what many scientists consider his greatest work, the general theory of relativity. It took him 10 years of thinking, testing, and making mistakes. The theory said something very strange, that gravity is not a force pulling objects together. Instead, mass bends space and time around it, like a heavy ball bending a soft mattress. If space is curved, planets and stars move the way they do not because of a force, but because they're following curved paths. It was a completely new way to think about the universe. At first, no one believed him. His theory was too strange. Even other scientists didn't know what to do with it. But then, in 1919, something amazing happened. During a solar eclipse, British scientists measured the position of stars near the sun. The light from the stars had bent, just as Einstein predicted. The newspapers the next day said, "Lights all askew in the heavens, Einstein's theory triumphs." Overnight, he became a superstar. But Einstein didn't like being famous. He once said, "I want to be alone with my violin and my equations." Still, he used his fame for good. He spoke against war. He fought for peace. He helped refugees. And he never stopped explaining science to the public. Albert believed science should not belong only to smart people in universities. He wanted everyone to understand it. When people asked him to explain relativity in simple words, he said, "When you sit with a pretty girl for 2 hours, it feels like 2 minutes. When you sit on a hot stove for 2 minutes, it feels like 2 hours. That's relativity." He was full of jokes like that. Once, someone asked him for his phone number. He didn't know it. "I don't memorize things I can look up in a book," he said. Another time, he was walking home from work, deep in thought. A neighbor saw him and asked, "Dr. Einstein, are you lost?" He looked up, smiled, and said, "No. I'm just trying to remember where I live." He was kind, but he was also stubborn. He never learned to drive a car. He didn't care about fashion. He hated socks and refused to wear them. Once, when visiting the US, he showed up to a formal dinner without shoes. When someone asked why, he said, "Why do I need shoes? No one looks at my feet." Even though he was a genius, Einstein was not perfect. He was sometimes hard to live with. He loved his work so much that he forgot birthdays and lost track of time. His first marriage ended in divorce. He had children, but he wasn't always a present father. Still, he kept trying to be a better person. As time passed, he moved to different countries. He left Germany when Adolf Hitler came to power. Einstein was Jewish, and the Nazis hated him. They burned his books. They called his science Jewish science. But Einstein didn't stay silent. He spoke out against them. He moved to the United States and took a job at Princeton University. There, he would stay for the rest of his life. In America, Einstein became more than a scientist. He became a symbol of freedom, of peace, of thinking for yourself. During World War II, he helped warn the US government that Germany might build an atomic bomb. This letter helped start the American bomb project. But later, Einstein regretted it. He hated war. When the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he said, "If I had known, would have never signed that letter." For the rest of his life, he worked for peace. He supported civil rights in America. He refused to stay quiet when people were treated unfairly. When a black opera singer, Marian Anderson, was not allowed to stay in a hotel because of her skin color, Einstein invited her to stay at his home. They became friends. He also supported the idea of a world government, one planet, one set of laws, to stop future wars. People called him a dreamer. But he believed deeply that science and politics should serve humanity, not destroy it. Even in old age, Einstein kept thinking. He spent his final years working on one big idea, a theory that would connect all forces in nature. He wanted one unified theory that explained everything: gravity, electricity, magnetism. He never finished it. But he never gave up. When he died in 1955, the world mourned. Newspapers around the globe put his photo on the front page. People said goodbye to the man who had changed how we see the universe. But Einstein did not want a big funeral. He wanted no statues, no graves. "I want to be forgotten," he once said. Of course, the world didn't listen. Albert Einstein's brain was different. Literally. After he died, something strange happened. The doctor who examined his body secretly removed his brain. He wanted to study it. Maybe he thought he could find the source of genius. The news didn't come out until years later. People were shocked. But others were curious: was there something special inside Einstein's head? Scientists studied the brain for decades. They found that parts of it were a little unusual, some areas were larger, some smaller. But there was no clear answer. Genius, it seems, isn't just about the shape of your brain. It's about how you think, how curious you are, and how hard you work. Einstein once said, "It's not that I'm so smart. It's just that I stay with problems longer." Even after death, people couldn't stop talking about him. He had become more than a man. He was a symbol of imagination, freedom, and the power of the human mind. His wild hair, his wrinkled eyes, his deep voice, and quiet humor stayed in people's memories. You could see his face on t-shirts, coffee mugs, school posters, and cartoons. But who was the real Einstein? He was someone who asked questions no one else asked. He imagined what it would be like to ride on a beam of light. He wondered what time really meant. He broke the rules of old science because he believed nature had its own logic, and he wanted to understand it. He also made mistakes. Not everything he believed was correct. Later in life, he didn't accept some new ideas in quantum physics. He didn't like the idea that the universe could be random. "God does not play dice," he said. But the younger scientists kept moving forward. They respected him, but they also moved past him. And yet, many of the greatest discoveries of the 20th and 21st centuries grew from his ideas. GPS systems use his theories to keep time accurate. Without relativity, your phone's map would lead you to the wrong street. Black holes, the expanding universe, even time travel, these are all connected to Einstein's work. When scientists took the first picture of a black hole in 2019, they said, "Einstein was right again." But Einstein didn't want to be just a scientist. He also wanted to be a human being. He played the violin almost every day. He once said that if he hadn't become a physicist, he would have been a musician. He loved Mozart and Bach. Music helped him think. When he was stuck on a hard problem, he would stop working, pick up his violin, and play. Somehow, the answers came more easily afterward. He also loved sailing. But he wasn't very good at it. He didn't care. He said, "When I sail, I don't need to think. I let the wind carry me." One time, his boat tipped over in the lake, and he didn't even notice. He just lay there, wet and smiling, still thinking about equations. Children loved him. He answered their letters with care. A boy once asked if scientists prayed. Einstein answered, "Science is about what is, not what should be." But every scientist feels wonder when looking at the universe. Another girl asked for help with her homework. He replied, "Study hard, and you'll be smarter than I am." Einstein was not religious in a traditional way, but he felt deep awe for the universe. He often used the word God when talking about nature. But he didn't mean a man in the sky. He meant the deep beauty and mystery of the cosmos. "The most beautiful thing we can experience," he said, "is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science." He believed that we should never stop being curious. He once said, "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." He saw the world as full of questions, waiting to be asked. He believed that knowledge grows from wonder, not from fear or pride. Einstein's final days were quiet. He still worked on his last great puzzle, the unified theory. He never finished it, but he kept writing and thinking until the end. When he died in 1955, his last words were spoken in German. The nurse didn't understand them. No one knows what he said. It was like the last line of a mystery story, one we'll never hear. But the story of Albert Einstein didn't end that day. His work continues. His life continues, in every classroom, in every space telescope, in every curious child who looks up at the stars and asks, why? He showed us that the universe is not cold and empty, it is full of beauty and order, hidden in numbers and light. He also taught us something else, that being human means more than being clever. It means standing up for peace, sharing what you know, and staying curious until your last breath. He laughed at himself. He cared about others. And he never stopped asking questions. So, the next time you look at the night sky, remember, that strange boy who stared at a compass, the dreamer who imagined bending time, the man with the wild hair and warm smile, he changed the world, not with power, but with thought. And maybe, just maybe, there's a little Einstein in all of us.